What's up, you guys? Roman wasn't built in a day here. I have been getting a lot of questions on my Instagram live stream about which frame rate should you use. Should you be shooting in 24? Should you be shooting in 30? Should you be shooting in 60? And I'm gonna give you a quick, straight to the point answer so you don't gotta waste no more time trying to figure out which frame rate you should be shooting in, okay? For the most cinematic look, the thing that's closest to what the human eye sees, we see in about 24 frames per second, okay? So that's why it's a typical cinematic standard to do 24 frames per second, okay? 30 frames per second is the digital standard. Like when you see a Blu-ray movie and it's like kind of moving too fast, a little choppy, usually that's 30 or even 60 frames per second, okay? 60 frames per second is typically what you want to slow down your footage to, okay? When I'm watching a video and it's exported in 60 frames per second, usually it's moving too fast for my eyes to process. It doesn't really look right, okay? It's used for some things, but typically not in cinematic film type work, okay? You want to slow your 60 frames per second footage down. 40% is going to run at 24 FPS. Always, you know, this is what I do. Always edit and render, edit and export in a 24 frames per second timeline, okay, no matter what frame rate you shot in. Got it? Another last rule of thumb before I let you guys go, okay, your shutter needs to always be at least 2 times your frame rate. Unless you're going for a stylized look, you want a bunch of motion blur and stuff like that, then you want to put it below your frame rate. But for rule of thumb, you want to have at least a shutter speed of 50 if your frame rate is at 24, and at least a shutter speed of 120 if your frame rate is at 60, at least a shutter speed of 60 if your frame rate is at 30. I never use 30 FPS. Some people do. That's cool, that's on you, but that's not what I use. If you're going for a cinematic look, I advise you don't ever use 30 FPS. It's really useless.